back to Conspiracy Cold Cases. I'm your host, Mundek Clement-Stein, still. Alright, before the break, I was telling you guys about the McKinley assassination, but there's something that you guys don't know about the McKinley assassination that you have to if you really want to understand it, okay? And this is going to sound like a conspiracy, but it's not. This is accepted historical fact, okay? The McKinley assassination was a copycat crime. So we started on September 6, 1901 with the McKinley assassination. Let's take it all the way back to July 29th of 1900. On July 29th of 1900, an Italian-American anarchist named Gaetano Bresci walked up to King Umberto I of Italy during a gymnastics display in Monza, Italy. He walked up with a .32 caliber Ivar Johnson pistol in his hand, and then he shot the King of Italy at point-blank range. That brings us to our first alternate theory to the Louis Babcock theory. And that's what I call the hero worship theory. Now, this is what the hero worship theory is. Bresci, obviously, his last name starts in B, right? So he would be the B in this scenario. I mean, Grzegorz emulated his crime, right? So it's fair to say that he looks up to Gaetano Bresci, right? Gaetano Bresci had a sidekick kind of character. This guy who would, he was like his best buddy. He helped him plot the assassination. He went with him from Paterson, New Jersey to Monza, Italy to help make sure that it went off properly. And his name was Antonio Lana, aka Antonio Larno, aka Antonio Larn. Okay? And obviously that starts with an L. So in this theory, L would be Lana and B would be Bresci. Leon Frank Grzegorz, the one who assassinated William McKinley, would etch LB onto the gun as a tribute to his hero and his hero's sidekick, right? That's the first theory. That's more plausible than the Louis Babcock theory! So stupid! Theory number 2. Alright? This is called the propaganda of the deed theory, or the propaganda by the deed theory, depending on which phrase you believe is real. Before the assassination of King Umberto I of Italy, way back before, in 1898, there was an assassination of, well, it was supposed to be, originally, the assassination of Philip VIII, right? You guys remember him, he was the Duke of Orleans. Yeah! Duke of Orleans, Philip VIII, right? So they're supposed to assassinate this guy, right? But he left town before the assassin could find him. That's the problem with picking assassins just like out of your buddies. Is that they don't know how to do it. You know? Like if you're gonna kill the Duke of Orleans, it's gonna take some planning, right? This guy was a schmuck. He's supposed to assassinate Philip VIII, but because that guy leaves before he can find him, he ends up assassinating Elizabeth of Bavaria. She's like the queen of Austria and Hungary, essentially, is what she is. And she's 60 years old, and she's miserable, and she's hated her entire life. In fact, after she was assassinated, her husband assumed that it was a suicide. Until like 15 minutes later when the second telegram showed up. Or, you guys get it. Alright, that's the right word, but that's fine. So the assassin who killed Elizabeth of Bavaria was a man named Luigi Lucchini. Luigi Lucchini was a terrible assassin. He was not good. He didn't want to shell out $8 for a knife. You're assassinating the Empress of Bavaria. When are you ever going to use money again? That knife is your last purchase. Shell out the extra couple bucks. Not this guy. This guy's shrewd. So this is what the guy does. This is what he decides to do. This is Luigi Lucchini's. He just prison shanks the Empress of Bavaria. That's what he does. He goes out, he takes a handle that he's made out of a piece of firewood that he's whittled down, Probably the whole time thinking how much worse whittling a piece of firewood is than spending $8. I'm doing a mistake! Idiot. This is what he used for a blade. He took a file, a 4-inch long, very thin file that he'd stolen from a factory. Now what this file was made to do was it was a part of a machine, and it would file smooth the eye of a needle. That's a weird thing to kill someone with. That's propaganda by the deed. He just sticks it into the end of this piece of firewood. He walks up behind the Empress of Bavaria. He kind of peeks under her umbrella, acts like he's stumbling, and then smacks her on the back. But when he smacks her on the back, he actually prison shanks her with his little homemade shiv. Because Elizabeth of Bavaria was a 60-year-old royal woman, back in those times, they used to use corsets all over your body. They called it corseting. And they would basically just tie women into the shape they wanted them to be. That's what happens. And so because her corseting is so tight, because it's hard to make a 60-year-old royal woman look like a rail-thin hourglass. So her corseting is so tight that actually, even though he stabbed her with a file through her heart, all the way through her heart, in the top, out the bottom left ventricle. It's ridiculous. Stabbed her through the heart because her corseting was so tight, she didn't start hemorrhaging until much later, after they removed the corseting. Now this part of the story is really strange because I had to check and see if hospitals had been invented yet in 1898 because they didn't take her to a hospital. She gets stabbed, the guy runs away because it's super confusing, right? Nobody saw that and was like, oh, he definitely shanked her with a file. He just smoothed the eye of the needle and then ran away pretending to be drunk. Now, nobody knew they didn't understand what had happened. So her lady in waiting leads her to this like harbor, and they get on a boat. They get on a boat, and they're just on a boat. She's just bleeding. Her main organ is hemorrhaging. That's her main organ. That's like the big one. It's just gushing blood like a sinking U-boat. You know, it's not working well. And she's just like laying on the deck bleeding. No one knows who she is because she's trying to conceal her identity so that no one assassinates her. She's just laying on the deck bleeding, and her lady in waiting is trying to explain to this captain, like, hey, please, will you help us? And he's just like, you should probably go back to shore. But while he's saying that, the ship is leaving. So they've got to like turn all the way back around and come back. And then you know where they take her? Still not the hospital. I checked, they were invented in Syria in like the year 700. They exist. She's royalty. They're not going to have a bed for the Empress of Bavaria? She's the Queen of Hungary and Austria. That's two kind of separate countries. So she dies, obviously, because they're having... She's bleeding to death! Head for that boat! Even if there's a doctor on board, you can't do surgery in open waters! You're not going to make a good incision. She's going to die in an even uglier way. So anyway, so that's what they did. That's how Luigi Lucchini assassinated the Empress of Bavaria. So the propaganda by the deed, or propaganda of the deed theory goes like this. Leon Frank Jogash, the one that assassinated McKinley, etched LB onto the gun. B standing for Gaetano Bresci, who assassinated King Umberto I, and L standing for Luigi Lucchini, who assassinated the Empress of Bavaria. Now, it might not seem like those two assassinations are necessarily connected. It might just be like, oh, I found somebody that has an L and somebody that has a B and I just smashed them together, right? That is not what happened. Both of those assassinations were called by an anarchist shot caller named Errico Malatesta. Errico Malatesta, he was quite a little pillow. He was a handful. When he was 14 years old, he got arrested for the first time. And, I felt kind of like akin to him when I first started reading about it, because I was like, you know what? I got arrested for the first time when I was 13 years old. But the difference is, when I was 13 years old, I lit a trash can on fire with an illegal firework. And when Errico Malatesta was 14 years old, he wrote a threatening letter to Umberto's father, the then king of Italy, Victor Emmanuel II. So next time your parents complain about how difficult you were as a child, just remember you didn't threaten to kill the king of Italy. That's what he did. And to his credit, he got close. He killed his son. Or he had someone else do it, Errico Malatesta. So he's the shot caller. He's the one that's deciding who's going to get assassinated and when they're going to get assassinated. And he's deciding who's going to do the assassinating. See, Gaetano Bresci, here's an interesting side note. Gaetano Bresci was not originally supposed to be the one to assassinate King Umberto I. Originally, Errico Malatesta had chosen a man with the most glorious name I've ever heard. Carboni Sperandio. Oh yeah. Where are my Carboni Sperandio fans at? Carboni Sperandio. Oh man, this guy's a special case. So he was originally the one Malatesta had decided to assassinate Umberto I. But Malatesta changed his mind. He decided he wanted Gaetano Bresci to do it instead. So, when Carboni Sperandio found out that he wasn't going to get to assassinate the King of Italy, he decided, well, I kind of already have my heart set on killing someone. So I'm going to kill my boss. That's what he did. He's like, if I can't kill the King of Italy, I'll kill the next best thing, right? Because you can't go back. You can't decide you're going to kill the King of Italy and then go back to mopping floors in a factory. It's not going to happen. So yeah, he murdered a man named Giuseppe Pacina, his boss in the factory in Italy. That's what he did. The Ballad of Carboni Sperandio. He's an inspiration to the most troubled among us. Right? So in the propaganda by the deed theory, Jolgosh is etching LB on the gun to appeal to Errico Malatesta. Now it sounds like why would he do that? Why would he have anything to prove to Errico Malatesta? Well, I'll tell you something. You're going to find out right after the break.
Mundek's wardrobe provided by an unattended machine at your local laundromat.